Hello, Psych 250 students. We're on to chapter 9. I hope you had something to eat before watching this video. If you haven't, maybe you weren't hungry, or maybe something else is going on. Today's topic is eating disorders. Now, all of us can relate to eating, primarily because it's what sustains us. We have our favorite meals. Sometimes we can be in a certain mood, but everything will change if our favorite meal is waiting for us, right? I often tell my wife when she makes something I find really delicious, I said, that's a do-over meal. What I mean by that, I wish I could start all over from the beginning and consume it all over again, right? Food has always been an issue for me as a kid. I suffered from being, how do you say, cherubic, chubby, chubsy wubsy, um, fat. It's an issue in our society, and we'll talk about it in a little bit. But so it's a pretty sensitive topic for me. There's all kinds of eating disorders. Some are restrictive, with anorexia nervosa. We're really looking at an issue where you're not interested in consuming any kind of food whatsoever. With bulimia, you still have an issue with the way your body looks, but you might be prone to bouts of consuming mass quantities of your favorite dish. Now, some of us have done that. We've kind of had binges, so to speak. Interestingly enough, once in a while, I get a beautiful advertisement from South Coast Plaza. I don't remember signing up for it. I think they just send it to certain communities that they're trying to lure you in to come shopping over there. And it's amazing because I every time I see it, I think, oh my gosh, this probably costs more than our textbook, right? Beautiful photography, as you can see. Here's a cover of an older issue. But I notice when I flip through all these editions, they always have very, very thin people as models. And that's pretty much the norm. And as you can see, these models always look like they're in a bad mood, right? Why do they always have that look? Maybe because they're told to pose that way, or maybe because they're hungry, right? These models are super thin. Look at this woman right here. She's about to faint, right? Because she hasn't had anything to eat for a long time. It's not limited just to women, even men. Look at that guy. He's looking. Does anybody have a cracker or something? Okay, I'm making jest of something that's pretty serious, but look at this picture right here. This guy doesn't even have anything on his plate. That should say it all, right? What's the message? This is the message we're bombarded with constantly. This is how you must look to look good in those clothes, which are super expensive, right? Um, that's not the truth. That's not reality. I know some years ago, I saw an advertisement at the Block, now known as the Outlets of Orange, in Orange, California. And they had full figured women as part of the advertisement. Excuse me. I think it's for Dove body wash. And it stopped me in my tracks because I'd never seen models that looked like real people. And I just thought, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. Finally, we're breaking that shell of what the real woman looks like. Well, I quickly found out that that advertisement campaign came and went, and I haven't seen anything since, right? Which is very sad. Are we talking mostly males or females? We're talking about mostly females. And we've talked about this issue before, but why is that the case? Society, right? Overwhelmingly, that advertisement I showed you from South Coast Plaza, clearly overwhelmingly women who are shown. If you go into any department store, it always makes me laugh. And I say, where's the men's department? I'll say, it's in a little corner over here, and the rest of the store is geared towards women because they know women typically like to shop. But this emphasis on thinness hasn't always been the case in our society. There was even an advertisement years ago advertising the television program called Friends. Some of you have seen that. And the billboard, which was in the Los Angeles area, said uh, something along the line of watch anorexic chicks on Friends or something like that. And there was such an uproar about that. They took the billboard down, but that just kind of gives you the sense of where people are going, right? This is how you must look to be the ideal. So let's talk about anorexia nervosa. Specifically, this notion, and these disorders make me nervosa just to talk about them, but this notion that I really don't need to consume anything. And so if I eat a Tic Tac for breakfast, that's going to sustain me for a while. And if you force me to eat something, then I'm going to have to go through extraordinary measures to try to counteract the effects of all that food I consumed, right? So that leads me to my case study for today. And it's called The Jogger. It takes place at Mecca. MECA stands for the Multi-Ethnic Counseling Center Alliance. And when I worked there, it was housed in the counseling center at Michigan State University in East Lansing, Michigan. Now, I started working at MECA. I was working at another agency at the time, and I got invited by the director of MECA and said, you know, we have a person who's going to be going to a different department for a year. So this position's only a year, but we'd love to have you. Now, I had a full-time gig that was going on, but I thought, you know what, I'd like to do something different. Now, sometimes you have to challenge yourself. Making these YouTube videos has been a challenge for myself. It's not one I chose, but you know, it's been a challenge. So I took the job knowing it's only going to be a year. Turns out it extended to like 2 years. And it turns out it was one of the best decisions I ever made because I wound up meeting my future wife there, right? So I'm working there, and the MECA, Multi-Ethnic Counseling Center Alliance, was such a wonderful place. There's still people to this day I'm friends with, right? Even though I haven't worked there since 1998. It's been a few years. So it's summer semester. Things are a little slower, not as many students. And a student arrives for an appointment with me. I go check out the paperwork and I read the chart. And it said that stress was the issue, which is very common for a lot of students who are living on campus and going to school and so forth. Underneath, for additional details, it said X anorexic. Now, I thought that was unusual for somebody to write that because, you know, back in the day, we used to say folks were ex-alcoholics, but we don't say that anymore. We say they're recovering alcoholics. Now, maybe somebody hasn't had a drink in 20 years, but they'll still say they're recovering because they know that that stuff can come back. And that's how we approach eating disorders. It's always there. It's not like you don't go to the bar and you don't go to the liquor store. Food is always there, and it's an always issue. So I looked up from the chart, and in the waiting room, we usually have a variety of different students. It's a pretty big waiting room. You can sit there and do your homework. You can read magazines. We usually just call the first name of the individual that's there to see you. When I looked at the waiting room, I immediately saw this young lady jogging in place. She had on one of those track suits where it was matching jacket and pants, right? She had a sweatband around her head, her hair in a ponytail, and she was jogging in place. That's unusual. Usually people are seated. Maybe they're a little nervous, thinking, oh, I got to go talk to this therapist. I don't know what what's going to happen. I have to deal with some issues. I didn't know if that was my client or not, but I just said their first name, and she looked up and she said hi. And normally, when I meet people, I introduce myself and I said, let's go down the hallway to my office. And we did that while she was still jogging. And so I went to go turn down. It's a long hallway, and my office was the last door on the left. She jogged ahead. She just shot out like a cannon. And I thought, what should I follow her? Should I jog with her? Or, I just kind of strolled a little faster than usual. And fortunately, she stopped at the end of the hallway where my office was, which I don't know if she figured that out, but she just ran out of room to run, I guess. But I thought, that's weird. Okay, so I eventually caught up with her and opened the door, and I said, have a seat. And then what we normally do is I have a seat here and you have a seat there, and I ask, what's brought you today? She's not sitting down. She's still jogging in place. I said, feel free to sit down. And she says, no, I had a slice of toast with butter today, and I need to finish up my 4 miles of running to burn off that toast. So I sat down, and I'll be honest with you, I was getting tired and a little sweaty just watching her exercise, right? So we started talking about her stress and so forth. And it's very difficult to focus on an individual as they're moving, right? As they're jogging up and down. But at some point I said, I noticed on your chart you mentioned that you were ex-anorexic. And so she went on to tell me that she had been treated for that and that was no longer an issue. And as a hobby, she had this incredible knowledge of nutrition. And she even asked me to challenge her. She said she knew the sugar, the fat content, the caloric intake, any food you can or beverage you can throw at her. She just had that like encyclopedia in her head because she was always very cognizant of what she was putting in her body. Now, there's nothing wrong with being an athlete. There's nothing wrong with eating healthy. There's nothing wrong with maintaining fitness. But I challenged her and I said, you know what? I don't think anorexia has really left you. This stopped her from jogging. What do you mean? She got a little defensive. I said, why don't you have a seat? Let's talk about this. So she did. And we did talk about it. So when you're restricting, whether it's you do consume some things and you merely burn it off by exercise or take laxatives so you can get it out of your system, that's not very cool. It doesn't give your body a chance to absorb any nutrients or minerals. Anorexics sometimes will be over at your house, and what they'll do is they'll give the illusion that they're eating. So they'll move their food around their plate. It gives the illusion that they ate something. If you have a dog, your dog absolutely loves when an anorexic comes over to your house to have dinner. Why? Because they wind up eating a lot of the food for the anorexic. They just slip it over to the dog. There are consequences. Anytime you're not putting fuel in to your car and it runs on empty, there are consequences. It's the same thing with bodies, right? It takes its toll on you physically. This is what happened to the great singer Karen Carpenter. Every time I hear her songs, I just think We've Only Just Begun and a variety of other songs. I just think, what a waste. What a loss. Only because somebody made a comment to her one time saying that she was gaining weight or getting kind of chubby. And she just deprived her body. She struggled with that to the point where her body just eventually collapsed. We lost such an amazing singing talent. We're going to talk about more eating disorders and their ramifications next time. Thank you.